I wasn't supposed to walk through my own front door on a Tuesday afternoon in April. The flight manifest had my return set for the 18th. I came back on the 9th. No one knew, not even her. And that was the point. I had this wild idea that I'd surprise her, scoop her up into my arms, kiss her until she forgot what year it was. I imagined her tears, the ones that always came when she missed me too much but didn't want to say it over the phone. I pictured our dog barking his head off, our daughter slamming her schoolbooks shut and running down the stairs. I thought I was about to walk into my life, not out of it. There were no sounds when I pulled into the driveway. Not the dog, not music from the kitchen, not even the vacuum she always ran when she got anxious. Just this eerie quiet that felt like a warning. And then I saw the car. It was sitting in the garage like it belonged there. Sleek, pretentious, that high-end kind of clean that doesn't belong in a family driveway. I recognized the license plate immediately. He'd driven it to our 4th of July barbecue last year. Parked it 2 blocks down, said he didn't want to flaunt. Her boss. The one she used to mention with that flicker in her eye, the one she'd always defend like he was made of glass. That man's car was parked in my house, while I was still wearing my boots from the Middle East. I didn't feel a rush of rage. No trembling hands, no blackout moment. It was worse than that. It was this cold, calculated silence in my mind, like a switch had flipped. I knew what I was seeing. I accepted it. I opened the hood of the car with the same face I used when checking a rifle, efficient, focused, distant. I reached into my pack, pulled out a plastic bag full of leftover bolts from a broken engine mount I'd fixed last year in the barracks. I tilted the bag. One by one, the bolts dropped inside like they belonged there. I closed the hood without a sound. When I walked inside, the scent of something expensive hit me immediately. Not food. Not perfume. The kind of hotel room scent that gets piped into the lobby to trick your brain into thinking everything's perfect. But it wasn't perfect. It was staged. I noticed the shoes first, his, not hers. Polished, black, placed too neatly beside the stairs. My heartbeat stayed steady, but something in me went sharp. I knew exactly where they were. I didn't have to look. I didn't storm through the house. I moved slow. Collected. Down the hallway through the living room. I passed the picture frames. I didn't stop to look. I didn't need reminders of the life I thought I had. The safe was still in the closet under our bed. I opened it. Took the MAGNUM. Not because I wanted to use it, but because I needed something that reminded me I was still in control of the situation. That I wasn't some pathetic husband pacing the floor while his wife played house with another man upstairs. The bedroom door was closed. It was never closed. I was 3 steps away from opening it when I heard her laugh. Not a fake giggle. Not the kind she used at work or with neighbors. It was that full-body laugh I hadn't heard in over a year. A sound she used to make with me when we'd collapse on the couch after a bad movie and a bottle of wine. And now she was using it with him. In our bed. My hand tightened on the doorknob. I was ready. Not for a fight. For the truth. For the mask to drop. For whatever version of her existed on the other side to show herself. But before I could turn the knob, there was a whisper behind me. Don't. I turned. Emma. 14. Eyes full of something I couldn't name. Not fear. Not confusion. Something darker. More dangerous. Don't ruin it now, she said, voice low. I've got a better plan to destroy his life. Her words didn't stumble. Her hands didn't shake. I looked at her and didn't see my little girl. I saw something sharper, older. Like she'd known for longer than I had. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. She took my hand and pulled me away from the door. And in that moment, without asking any questions, without saying a single word, I let her lead. Because something told me this wasn't her first time standing in that hallway. And she was ready to burn everything down. Emma didn't say another word until we were in the basement. Not because we were hiding, no. She walked with purpose, like this was a route she had practiced in her head 100 times. I followed, still holding the MAGNUM, still wearing the same boots I'd stepped off the plane in, still wondering how long my own daughter had been living in a different version of our home. We stopped at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by unfinished walls and the scent of old paint and damp concrete. That's when she turned to me, eyes lit up with something close to fury, but smarter. Quieter. He's been here before, she said. I don't mean once. I mean every week. Her voice didn't crack. She wasn't confessing, she was reporting. And that's what shook me. This wasn't shock or sorrow or some sad little plea for help. My daughter was giving me intelligence. Tactical. Controlled. She had been watching, waiting. They think I'm too young to understand, she said, walking over to the old desk in the corner. They talk in code like I can't tell what's going on just because they don't say the words. She opened a drawer, pulled out a small black device. I recognized it immediately, a recorder. The kind journalists use. The kind you can slip behind a couch cushion or hide under a car seat. She hit play. The sound of her voice filled the room. Lighter. Breathier. It was recorded from somewhere in the house. Don't park too close next time, Greg. He's not stupid, he'll figure it out. Greg's voice answered, nasal and smug. He's not coming back for 2 weeks. And even if he does, what's he gonna do? Yell me to death? Then laughter. Hers. His. I felt something snap in my jaw. Emma hit stop. I have 6 of these, she said. More upstairs. They talk like no one else exists. They think I'm too obsessed with my phone to notice when she walks around in silk robes and pours him whiskey at noon. They think I didn't see him slap her once when she joked about his wife. I froze. What? She didn't flinch. He hit her. Not hard. Just enough to show he could. That sentence lived in my stomach like acid. My wife had been playing pretend with a man who wasn't just disrespecting our marriage, but her own dignity. And she was letting him. Maybe even liking it. I'm not doing this because I want you two back together, Emma continued, stepping closer. I'm doing it because I've been living in this lie for months. Pretending I don't know. Pretending I don't hear things through the vents. I'm done pretending. And if you go in there with a gun now, you'll make it all about you. But if you let me handle it, I'll make sure you're not the one who gets blamed when this house burns down. She looked at me with the kind of fire you only see in people who've been betrayed too early in life. It broke something in me. I'd been gone. I'd left her in this with them. I was supposed to protect her, and instead, she had built her own war plan from scraps and overheard secrets. I put the gun down. She didn't smile. She just nodded. Like this was step 1 of a mission she'd already planned down to the minute. Tonight, she said, we let them think it's normal. We don't confront. We don't scream. You go take a shower. You let her see you. You act like you don't know a thing. And tomorrow we make our move. I stood there, drenched in silence, looking at my daughter, this stranger who still had my eyes, and realized something terrifying. She wasn't trying to save me. She was trying to end them, and I was ready to let her. I stood under the shower for almost 30 minutes, letting the water run hot enough to burn, hoping it would wash off the feeling of being a fool in my own home. But it didn't. The silence wasn't cleansing. It was heavy, pulsing. Everything I touched now felt like it belonged to a memory instead of a life I still lived. Upstairs, I could hear them moving around. Not panicked, not guilty, comfortable. The creak of the floorboards told me exactly where they were. She was walking down the hallway, laughing softly. He was in my robe. I didn't need to see it. I just knew. That was the kind of betrayal that lived in your bones once you felt it. I stepped out, dried off, got dressed. Nothing fancy. Just enough to pass for someone returning early without an agenda. I walked up the stairs like I hadn't been 5 feet from vengeance an hour ago. Emma was in her room, door shut. No lights on. Her way of staying off their radar. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand didn't shake, but I felt the pressure in my chest growing, like I was holding a scream under my ribs. The fridge was stocked with things I didn't buy. Imported cheeses, bottled cocktails, fancy olives she'd never eaten a day in her life, his tastes. They'd filled my house with his tastes. That's when she walked in, hair wrapped in a towel, wearing my shirt. Not as a sentimental gesture, no, this was just habit. She didn't even register the insult. She froze when she saw me, like the air had suddenly changed weight. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. You're home, she said, like it was a question. Looks that way. I didn't move. I let the silence thicken between us. She glanced toward the hallway, probably wondering if he was still visible, if I'd seen him, if I'd heard anything. I thought you weren't due back until next week, she added, stepping closer. Fake smile slipping into place like makeup. Paperwork got moved around. Flight got changed. She nodded slowly, then reached for a cup like we weren't standing in a house full of shattered lines. The silence dragged on for one more beat, and then, "I was gonna call you tonight," she said. I stared at her. "To tell you about things." I almost laughed. She was trying to stage a controlled confession. Like she still had some power left in this. Like she could still steer the narrative. "What things?" She hesitated. Her eyes shifted, calculating. "Just stuff I've been thinking about. The distance. How we've both changed. I think we need to talk. But not now. I don't want to fight." It was breathtaking. The audacity of it. Like the lies weren't burning behind her every word. Like she could still control what version of this I was going to believe. "I agree," I said. "Let's not fight. Let's talk tomorrow." Relief flashed in her face. That smug little hope. That maybe she could steer this back into a softer crash landing. She nodded, stepped closer, went to kiss my cheek. I stepped back. She didn't speak again. Just smiled too fast and walked out of the room. And then, like clockwork, the idiot appeared. He came down the stairs like he owned the place. His shoes in his hand, phone tucked into his waistband. He saw me, blinked, then tried to offer me that same tight-lipped fake professional smile I'd seen him give everyone else. "You must be—" I walked past him before he could finish. Didn't even look at him. Didn't need to. That small dismissal, that void of attention, was louder than any insult. I left him standing there like furniture no one wanted. I went to the backyard. The sun was going down, bleeding orange across the fence line. I sat down in the lawn chair Emma had broken last summer and waited. She joined me 5 minutes later. No words, just handed me a notepad. On the top, Operation Clean Slate. Page 1, detailed timeline of their meetings. Dates, times, locations. Page 2, printouts of her Google searches. Divorce law, alimony protection. Can a boss fire you for ending an affair? Page 3, voice transcription of the recordings. Conversations so smug, so reckless, they made my skin crawl. "She's not just cheating," Emma said softly. "She's trying to figure out how to leave without losing the money." And that's when it clicked. She wasn't falling in love. She was building an exit strategy. With my house, my pension, and zero intention of taking Emma with her. The game had changed. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was war. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, calmer. Like the calm that settles over the ocean right before a storm you can see coming from miles away. She was already up when I came downstairs, humming to herself in the kitchen, barefoot and making pancakes. Like it was any other Wednesday. Like the man she dragged into my house and my bed hadn't just walked out an hour ago in yesterday's clothes. I sat at the table and watched her. Not eating, just watching. She caught my gaze, gave me a smile and said, "Thought you might like a real breakfast. You've been eating who knows what overseas." She flipped a pancake and dropped it on the plate like she was presenting a peace offering. "We should talk later," she added. "About us." I nodded. "We will." That was all she needed. She thought I was back on the hook. That the flames she'd lit had cooled down because I wasn't throwing the table through the wall. She didn't understand the difference between silence and surrender. Emma didn't come down for breakfast. We'd agreed she wouldn't. Part of the plan. Stay quiet. Stay out of reach. Let the enemy think they had control. At 10 a.m., I watched her from the hallway as she took a call on the porch. I couldn't hear the words, but her voice was soft, flirtatious. She twirled the phone cord in her fingers like she was 16 again. Still trying to be the girl who seduced someone else's power. She was scheduling their next meeting. At 10:12 a.m. I texted Emma, "Phase 1 starts now." 10 minutes later, I called in a favor. My old buddy Mark had retired from the Army 2 years before me and moved into private security work. He owed me more than one favor, but this wasn't about debt. It was about precision. I didn't want violence. I wanted evidence. Proof so airtight she couldn't spin her way out even if she hired a team of lawyers and wore a halo. Mark showed up that afternoon with a black SUV, a drone, and 2 high-definition cameras smaller than a pack of gum. We worked fast, one camera in the guest bedroom air vent, another in the home office behind the fake plant she never dusted. The drone would be saved for later when we needed visual confirmation of a business meeting at her boss's cabin. She didn't notice a thing. She was too busy texting. Around 2 p.m. she came into the living room with that breathy voice again. "Hey, I need to run some errands, groceries and stuff. Want anything?" I shook my head. She left without waiting for an answer. As soon as the door closed, Emma came downstairs holding a flash drive. Her eyes were bloodshot. I didn't ask if she'd slept. She handed me the drive. "She's planning to move out by the end of the month. She's already talked to a real estate agent, wants to sell the house while you're still on paper overseas. She thinks she can force it." I didn't react. "Not yet. She wants to make it look like you abandoned her emotionally," Emma continued. "She even drafted an email from your account to a fake therapist saying you've emotionally withdrawn due to trauma. She hasn't sent it yet. She's waiting for the right moment." That was it. This wasn't betrayal anymore. It was identity theft wrapped in a smiling face. She wasn't just dismantling the marriage, she was rewriting the narrative, turning me into the villain of her new chapter. Emma sat down beside me, legs tucked under her, quiet for a long time. "Why didn't you ever cheat?" she asked suddenly, not looking at me. The question knocked the breath out of me. Not because I was offended, but because I didn't have a quick answer. I could have said loyalty. I could have said love. But the truth was simpler. Because I meant the vows, I said finally. She didn't say anything. That night, she came back late, smelling like his cologne. She made up some lie about traffic and late-night shopping, dumped a bag of groceries on the counter like that could cancel the scent of another man's car interior. I asked her how her day was. She smiled and said, "Just long." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I did neither. I said goodnight. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling and thought about what she'd done to my daughter. How she'd let her watch this show of deception for almost a year. How she'd underestimated her. How she'd underestimated me. Tomorrow, Emma would go to school. I'd take a trip to the cabin with Mark and the drone. Tomorrow, the truth would stop whispering. It would start screaming. The drive to the cabin took just under an hour. Mark knew the backroads better than I remembered, weaving through dense forest like he was born in it. The trees thickened around us the closer we got, swallowing cell signal and sound. No traffic, no cameras, no neighbors. Perfect. Emma had mapped out the address 3 weeks earlier. Said she'd seen it once on a calendar app when my wife wasn't paying attention. She screenshotted it, dated it, tracked the pattern. He used the cabin for private meetings. She never said what they talked about up there, but I didn't need a transcript. I knew. As we pulled up, I spotted the Mercedes parked at an angle near the porch, half covered by trees. No license plate on the front like they thought that would make a difference. Windows dark, lights off, but they were inside. The air around the place was too still, like everything was holding its breath. Mark deployed the drone from the back of the SUV. It rose without a sound, just a whisper of blades slicing air, and disappeared above the tree line. I watched through his tablet as the feed came to life, infrared then high definition. 2 bodies. One pacing. One sitting. Zoomed in, it was her. She was wearing a silk robe. Not mine. Not one I'd ever seen. The kind of thing people pack when they don't plan to sleep alone. She was barefoot. Drinking wine. He stood near the fireplace, holding something. Talking. Animated. The drone hovered in silence as the camera focused on their mouths. Mark hit a button, audio pickup. It caught only fragments, but it was enough. He's back, but I've got him handled. He's calm, which means he's broken. He always folds when I play soft. Then her laugh. That high, practiced, mocking laugh that once belonged to the woman who cried at our wedding because she couldn't believe love could feel that real. "I'm giving it 2 weeks, she continued. "The sale, the account transfer. He'll sign. I've already started prepping Emma. Once the money clears, I'll ghost him like he never existed." She poured more wine, smiled to herself. "He doesn't even know what I'm doing to him. He thinks we're fixing things. Poor idiot. Mark looked at me. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. I just kept watching. She walked to Greg, whispered something in his ear. He laughed, took the glass from her hand, and pulled her in. They kissed. Sloppy. Arrogant. Mark turned off the audio. You want to keep watching? He asked. No, I said. I've seen enough. We let the drone hover a few more minutes, taking in the angles of the room, the layout, the door codes on the wall keypad. Then Mark brought it back down, clean and silent. The drive back was quiet. But my mind wasn't. She wasn't trying to escape a bad marriage. She wasn't running from neglect or pain or trauma. No. She was engineering a full-scale financial and emotional erasure. A hit job dressed up as a redemption arc. She thought I'd fold. That I'd play the apologetic husband and sign everything away just to keep the illusion of peace. She thought she could prep Emma like she was a pawn to be moved between custody schedules and school districts. But she made two fatal mistakes. She underestimated the man she married, and she completely misread the daughter she raised. By the time we got home, Emma was already there. School bag dumped on the floor, eyes locked on her laptop. She'd pulled transcripts from the recorder under the couch. More damning conversations. The kinds of things judges don't forgive. She texted, Emma said without looking up. Said she might stay the night to clear her head. Said not to wait up. I didn't answer. Emma turned the laptop toward me. She's planning to drain your joint account next Friday. I found the transaction timers. She's routing it through a dummy LLC. She thinks she can hide it? No. She thinks you won't notice until it's too late. The printer kicked on. Pages filled with black ink, financial logs, bank screen caps, phone records. This is enough? She asked. It's enough. But Emma wasn't finished. She stood up, went to the coat closet, and pulled out an old shoebox. Inside was a phone I'd never seen before. She gave me this last year, Emma said. Told me to keep it in case she ever needed to reach me without Dad listening in. She powered it on. Dozens of texts popped up. Her conversations with Greg. Planning. Manipulating. Lying. Mom thinks this phone is her secret, Emma said. It's going to be her undoing. I sat back in my chair. Not because I was tired, but because I suddenly saw the whole board clearly. Every move. Every lie. Every fake apology. The next step wasn't rage. It was strategy. Tomorrow, we visit a lawyer. The day after, the bank. And after that, the Betrayal storm begins. The lawyer's office was tucked between a dentist and a dog groomer in a building that looked like it had seen more divorces than birthday parties. No fanfare. No gold plaques or motivational posters, just a nameplate on the door and the faint scent of strong coffee and quiet battles. Emma insisted on coming with me. I told her no. She insisted again. I'm not a kid anymore, she said. And this isn't your mess alone. She wasn't wrong. She'd been forced into the shadows of this betrayal for too long. Watching. Listening. Surviving. If I was going to dig us out of this, she deserved to see what that looked like from the front row. The lawyer, Brenda Hargrove, was the kind of woman who didn't waste a single word. Gray-streaked hair, glasses, steel tone. She listened without interrupting while I laid everything out. The early return. The car in the garage. The tapes. The drone footage. Emma's research. The hidden phone. The bank transfers. That exit plan. She only raised an eyebrow once when Emma handed her a manila envelope labeled Sequence A Collapse. You named the operation? Brenda asked. Emma looked her dead in the eye. Plans only work when you take them seriously. Brenda opened the file. Read in silence for almost 10 minutes. Then she looked up and said the words I didn't realize I was dying to hear, we can win this. She laid it out clean. My wife had made every mistake a guilty party can make. She documented her own manipulation. Abused the household accounts. Involved a coworker in a romantic entanglement while using his influence to stage a financial takeover. It wasn't just infidelity. It was strategy wrapped in fraud. She's trying to sell the house, I said. She's moving fast. Brenda nodded. Not anymore. I'll file a freeze on all joint asset movements today. And an injunction by morning. She won't be able to move a cent until we're done. Emma leaned back. She'll panic. That's the idea, Brenda replied. We left the office with 2 signed affidavits and a printed timeline so precise it felt like a military campaign. We weren't just reacting now. We were ahead. But the house we returned to felt colder than it had the day before. Emptier. Her perfume still lingered in the air, a ghost trying to stay relevant. Her half-drunk tea was still on the counter. Her coat was still on the chair. But the silence around her things felt less like absence now and more like evidence. Like her whole existence in this house had been a performance she forgot to end properly. That night, Emma went upstairs to work on a presentation, one that wasn't for school. I sat in the den, drinking black coffee, staring at a blank TV screen. At 9:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from her. Thinking of staying another night. Cabin's really helping me think. Hope you and Em are doing okay. I stared at the text. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, take your time. We're doing great. She read it immediately. No reply. The silence this time was mine. At 10:15 p.m., Emma came downstairs holding a flash drive and a folder. She'll come home tomorrow, she said. When the bank calls. When she sees she can't move anything. She paused, then added, you ready to look her in the eye? No, she raised an eyebrow. But I'll do it anyway. She nodded once and slid the folder across the table. Inside, color printouts, side-by-side comparisons of her texts with Greg and her conversations with me. One labeled truth, the other facade. This is what we hand the court if she tries to paint you as unstable. I didn't ask how she knew what that meant. She'd already lived it. By midnight, the house was silent again. But this time, the silence felt like something else entirely. Not absence. Preparation. Tomorrow she'd walk through that door thinking she still held the leash. But tomorrow, the trap would spring. And we'd be ready. She walked in at 9:12 the next morning. No warning. No text. Just the sound of her keys in the door, like this was still her kingdom. Like she hadn't spent the last 3 days wrapped in silk, drinking wine and scheming the slow destruction of the people under her roof. She didn't look surprised to see me in the kitchen. If anything, she looked irritated. Her eyes scanned my face like she was trying to read my emotional temperature. I gave her nothing, just poured my coffee and took a sip. Morning, she said lightly, setting down her bag. Didn't expect you to be up so early. I didn't reply. She walked past me, opened the fridge, and made a show of checking the milk like we were roommates who'd split a grocery bill. When she turned back around, her smile was back, but tighter this time. Hollow. Calculating. Emma at school? I met her eyes. She's fine. She nodded, trying to look casual. But her fingers were already twitching toward her phone. She checked it. No alerts. No movement. That's when the first flicker of confusion hit her face. Something weird happened with my bank app this morning, she said carefully. I couldn't log in. Maybe you've had the same issue. Nope. That single word was all it took. I saw the realization flicker across her face like a match catching fire. Not full panic yet, but the slow dawning of a new reality. One where she was no longer 2 steps ahead. She took a breath, tried to smile again. I'm sure it's just a technical glitch. I'll call the bank later. I shrugged. Might want to do that soon. Something tells me your accounts are gonna be harder to access moving forward. Her smile cracked for real this time. What does that mean? It means, I said, stepping toward her, you're not the only one who's been making plans. She froze. Her mask slipped not all the way, but enough. Enough to show the sharp, vicious truth beneath the polished charm. What are you talking about? You were right. About one thing. I've changed. I stopped being the man who ignored the signs. Stop being the guy who let your stories fill in the gaps while you gutted the life we built. Her jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Am I? Because Brenda Hargrove doesn't think so. She blinked. Who? My lawyer. You know. The one freezing the joint assets you tried to drain with a dummy LLC. Color drained from her face. And just like that, there it was. The first real crack in the armor. She swallowed hard. You're bluffing. I pulled the folder from the kitchen drawer and tossed it onto the table. Go ahead. Read it. She didn't move. So I opened it for her, showing her the printouts, the time-stamped screenshots, the bank transfers, the messages she thought were invisible, the call logs from her burner phone, the fake email draft she started from my account, the conversations she didn't realize Emma recorded when she was working from home. Silence. She finally reached for the folder with trembling hands, flipped through the first few pages, and then slammed it shut. "You're spying on me?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting what's left." Her voice turned hard. "You manipulated Emma." I stepped in close, and this time I let the mask drop. "No, you did. For a year. You lied to her, played house with another man under her nose and called it growing pains. She's the one who built this case. She's the one who dug you out from under your own lies. She's not your excuse anymore. She's the reason this ends today." Her face contorted. She looked around like the walls were caving in, like maybe there was still some hidden button she could press to reset the narrative. "Greg will back me up," she muttered. I almost laughed. Greg's HR file is already in Brenda's hands. Turns out workplace affairs don't sit well with corporate, especially when they come with threats, slaps, and plans to oust your subordinate spouse from his own home. Her face turned white. "You can't prove that. We don't need to. The recordings are enough." Silence swallowed the room. Heavy. Ugly. True. She sat down, suddenly unsure of her own legs. For the first time in years, she looked small. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "We could have ended this quietly. We are ending it quietly. But not the way you wanted. You don't get to ghost me. You don't get to rewrite history and call yourself the victim. You burned the bridge and now you get to watch it collapse." The front door opened. Emma walked in, headphones around her neck, eyes locked on her mother. Neither of them spoke. She dropped her backpack on the floor, walked to me, and handed me a flash drive. "Updated timeline," she said, with Greg's number synced to the burner. My wife, no, this woman, looked between us like she didn't recognize either of us anymore. And that's when I saw the final truth settle behind her eyes. She lost. And we weren't done yet. She didn't leave that day. I thought she might. After seeing the folder, hearing Emma's voice cold with clarity, realizing she wasn't just outmaneuvered but outnumbered, I thought she'd retreat. Go running back to Greg or her parents or whoever she thought would still offer sympathy. But she stayed. She stayed because that's what manipulators do when the ground slips. They freeze, waiting for the chance to spin a new angle. She thought if she lingered, played humble, teary, or tragically misunderstood, maybe one of us would crack. She thought wrong. That night, she paced the living room while Emma and I pretended to watch a movie. Her footsteps weren't frantic, but they weren't casual either. She kept glancing at us like we were a jury she hadn't convinced yet. "I know you're angry," she finally said from behind the couch, voice dripping with performance. "But I want you both to know I never meant to hurt anyone." Emma didn't even turn around. "You meant to replace us." The woman winced like she'd been slapped. "That's not fair." I muted the TV. "You were planning to sell the house," I said. "Take the money. Move across the state. You already had listings bookmarked. You just hadn't figured out how to break the news yet." "I was scared," she said, stepping closer, arms folded like armor. "I didn't know how to leave." "You didn't plan to leave," Emma said sharply. "You planned to vanish. There's a difference." The room fell silent. The air was dense with everything she'd built and tried to keep hidden under throw pillows and forced laughter. She started to cry. Real tears. But real tears can be useless when they come too late. "I gave up so much for this family," she whispered. "You don't know what it's like feeling invisible. Like no one sees you anymore." I stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and returned with a single sheet of paper. A list. Every date she left to clear her head. Every weekend trip that fell through. Every time Emma found her whispering into the burner phone behind closed doors. I placed it on the coffee table. "You weren't invisible. You were elsewhere. And we noticed. We just didn't want to believe it." She stared at the paper, jaw twitching, tears drying. "I messed up," she said. "But we can still fix this." "No," I said. "You can't." And then, for the first time, she turned her full attention to Emma. "I never meant for you to get caught in this." Emma looked up. And when she spoke, her voice was stone. "You left me alone with your lies. Every time he called, you smiled. Every time I asked where you were, you fed me a story. You made me doubt what I was seeing. You made me doubt myself. That's not a mistake. That's cruelty." The woman sat down hard, like her body finally caught up to her shame. But still, no apology. Just damage control. And then the doorbell rang. She looked up like it might be a miracle. It wasn't. It was Mark, holding a clipboard. "I've got the server uploads confirmed," he said, nodding to me. "Banks frozen. Lawyers ready for signatures." Emma stood, crossed the room, took the clipboard, and signed her statement as a secondary witness. Mark handed me the final packet, Brenda's updated legal draft, countersigned and sealed. My wife, or whatever was left of the woman I thought I knew, looked between us like she couldn't decide if we were punishing her or saving her from herself. "I need time," she said, "to think, to breathe." "Take all the time you need," I said. "But not here," Emma added. And we meant it. No screaming, no door slamming, just precision, control, and the quiet reclaiming of a home that had forgotten what it meant to feel safe. She packed that night. 2 bags. Nothing else. She left without another word. But this wasn't the end. Because the reckoning, the public one, was still waiting. She tried to go quiet. That was her first move after walking out. Silence. No more calls. No texts to Emma. Not even a legal counter to the paperwork we served her. As if she thought vanishing would slow us down or worse, soften us. But that's the thing about fire. It doesn't stop burning because someone turns their back on it. Emma and I weren't done. Not even close. The next day, the HR department at Greg's company received a package. No return address. Inside, voice recordings, screenshots, transcripts of texts, photos from the drone, and a full report prepared by Brenda and her legal aid. It was more than enough to show he'd been conducting a personal relationship with a subordinate spouse while leveraging professional favors and influencing financial outcomes for personal gain. By noon, he was suspended pending investigation. By 3 p.m., we had confirmation from an anonymous source inside the company. His corporate laptop had been seized. Email logs were being pulled. His access was revoked. By 6 p.m., Emma and I watched from the living room as her mother's number lit up my phone 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. Neither did Emma. She tried again the next morning, this time with a single message: "You don't understand what you've done." But we did. We understood exactly. She wanted to play quiet. We made sure her world got loud. The real estate agent she tried to use to list our house received a cease and desist order from Brenda along with evidence of unauthorized property listing and fraudulent intent to sell joint property under sole ownership. The dummy LLC account? Seized and flagged for investigation. Her private withdrawal attempts frozen. The therapist whose name she used to draft the fake emotional withdrawal email? Contacted. Statement signed. He never had her as a client. He never saw me. And now he's preparing a defamation affidavit. We didn't come at her like a betrayed husband or a bitter teenager. We came like a team. Collected. Relentless. Documented. And when you pull off betrayal with this level of calculation, the only way to end it is to take it apart with equal precision. 2 days after Greg's suspension, she showed up at Emma's school. Tried to talk. Emma didn't even flinch. She called the principal, reported the incident, and then turned her mother's attempted visit into another documented act of boundary violation in our custody file. The woman I once married wasn't just unraveling, she was finally seeing herself from the outside. And it was terrifying her. That night, she left a voicemail. Voice shaking. Not crying, not apologizing, pleading. "We can fix this. Please. We're still a family. I made mistakes, but you're blowing this out of proportion. I was scared. That's all." Scared? You don't stage financial abandonment and build a new life blueprint out of fear. You do it out of arrogance. And now that arrogance was bleeding out in real time. Emma and I sat outside that night. No TV, no phones, just the cool spring air, the kind of silence that didn't ache anymore. "We're close," she said. "One more move, and she won't be able to spin anything." I looked at her, this teenager who had become steel under pressure. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm tired, but I'm okay." She looked up at the stars, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the girl she used to be. The one who loved constellations and made up her own names for them. "She underestimated us," she whispered. "She didn't just underestimate us," I said. She forgot we were watching, and now everyone else was watching too. The final move wasn't explosive. It was quiet, surgical, the kind of ending that doesn't make headlines but changes everything. It started with a courtroom. 1 week after she left the house, we filed for full custody. Not shared, not rotating weekends, not even supervised visits. Full. We had the evidence. We had the timeline. We had the truth. And most importantly, we had Emma's voice in writing, signed and notarized, stating with unwavering clarity that she did not feel safe in her mother's care. That she had been lied to, manipulated, and emotionally exiled long before her mother ever packed a bag. The judge reviewed the file for less than 30 minutes before granting the emergency order. 1 day later, the divorce proceedings escalated. Brenda dropped the full compiled case onto the table like a warhead. Infidelity, financial deceit, emotional manipulation, attempted identity fraud, and a coordinated effort to separate a minor from her legal guardian. And that was before we brought in the employment documents showing how Greg's position gave her access to internal company financial systems she wasn't legally entitled to. Her lawyer, some stiff-suited guy who looked like he was hoping for a quiet alimony battle, read through the file with sweat on his temples and no answers in his mouth. She tried to defend herself once in front of a mediator. Said I was cold. Said I drifted away. Emma stood up before I could say a word. He didn't drift. You pushed him. You dragged a stranger into our house and called it normal. You lied to me for months, and when I asked you what was happening, you told me to grow up. The room fell silent. The mediator didn't ask any more questions after that. By the end of the week, it was over. She didn't get the house. She didn't get the accounts. She didn't get custody. She didn't even get a proper exit. What she got was a reputation. Greg was fired. His wife filed for divorce 2 days later. Her name became a whisper in professional circles, a cautionary tale about boundary violations and sleeping too close to power. Emma and I moved forward. Not fast, not with fanfare, but forward. We repainted the walls of the house. Got rid of every piece of furniture she ever picked. Even the dog, who hadn't barked in weeks, seemed to breathe easier. I bought Emma a telescope. A good one. She named it Clean Slate. One night, a month later, she pointed it at the sky and said, "That one's ours." She meant the star. But it felt like more. This house, this life, it belonged to us again. And her? She became a story. A lesson. If you lie long enough, destroy enough trust, manipulate deep enough, you don't just lose your family. You get erased from it. And for anyone reading this, anyone standing in the fire, thinking you're going crazy, thinking maybe you're the one who's losing it, remember this, you're not crazy. You're being hunted. Start collecting the truth. Write it all down. Dates. Words. Smirks. Changes in routine. Bank transfers. Whispered phone calls. All of it. Because when the moment comes to strike back, you don't need rage. You need evidence. You need silence. And then when they least expect it, you take everything back.